Hey there, Rye the Car Guy here, and today we are replacing the valve cover gaskets on the Nissan Titan. Now the Titan has what's called the vk56 engine, which is just a 5.6 liter V8, and that is shared with other vehicles as well, like the QX56 and the Armada as well. So this should apply to those vehicles. And what we're going to be doing today is, of course, just taking the valve covers off, or getting to the valve covers, taking them off, and swapping out the actual valve cover gaskets. For me, this is triage for my Titan. I want to be able to use this truck. I just recently purchased it, but there's two main things I need to deal with. It is an incredibly leaky valve cover and the hubs on the front. So once those things are fixed, I'll be able to drive it at least for a little bit before I continue to dig into the engine. But the idea is that on the left side here, we have a very, very serious leak that is dropping oil onto the catalytic converter and the O2 sensor. Of course, that exhaust gets super, super hot, and every time I drive it, I get a smoke coming out of the engine compartment, which is incredibly concerning. The last thing I want, of course, is my truck to go up in a ball of flames. So we need to get that resolved. The other big challenge is I have not seen a sandier engine in my life. Whoever drove this must have loved driving on trails or driving on the beach here in Florida, but this entire engine is just absolutely coated in a layer of sand. So personally, I need to rectify that before taking off these valve covers for obvious reason, right? Sand getting into your valve train, your cams, your rockers, all of that would be a pretty awful thing to happen. So I'm gonna start taking some of this off, some of the covers. I'm gonna go in with some compressed air. I'm gonna wipe stuff off. And this is an extreme example, but you should also make sure that the area around the valve covers is as clean as possible, because when you're taking it off, you don't want to drop things again onto the valve train. So I'm going to get started by taking out the air box and the engine cover, and then I'm going to take a break to do some cleaning, but then we'll go back and start taking off the valve covers. Taking off this top engine cover should be nice and simple. We just have two 10mm bolts here, so just pop these out. Once those two are off, the rest should just be a little compression fit at the back. There we go. Awesome. Pop that off. Now before I take off my airbox, which is the next step, I'm going to grab some compressed air and just make sure that the area around it is as clean as possible. And of course, I'm going to hit compressed air down all of the sides of the valve covers. And you know, as you can see, there's just sand freaking everywhere. So I'm just going to get as much of it as I can off before, of course, opening up holes directly into the engine. Now that I feel like I've been sandblasted, you can see just how much sand was on the top of the engine. So I'm going to grab a brush now, like a soft bristle brush, and go over it, try to get more off, but I'll spare you watching that, of course. And once I feel comfortable with that, we'll take off the air induction. Excellent. I think we're in a good enough place here to take off our air box. So I'm just going to take off the clamp going on to the throttle body. Of course, take off the electrical connection to your mass airflow sensor. And then there's also a little connection here, just holding a cable onto the top of the airbox, because that's going to get removed as well. So just grab your flathead here, loosen this. Of course, for me, knock all the sand off of it. Make sure that goes loose. Looks like we have a couple air hoses back here as well, maybe PCV. Yes, they look like PCV. So take these two off as well. Mass airflow should just come right off like any other regular connector. There we go. And then this is just pinching so the little tabs go in, and that'll pop right off. So I'm just going to work these off. These do not feel healthy. Yikes. Now that those are loosened, I'm just going to take them off once the whole thing is out. So rock this off. There we go. Unclip your actual air box so that comes loose. And now we have a little more room to play on these. Oh, my PCV just fell off the other side. Whatever. Pull that off. There we go. I'll reconnect that for now. I'm sure we'll be taking it off here in a little bit. And then just yank this other one off. Awesome. Oh, it looks like there's another little hose over here, maybe a breather hose, that needs to be disconnected from the airbox as well. It appears to be one of those annoying little zip tie clamps. You just need to clamp it and pull out. Now that that's out, set that aside. And now we can really start to see stuff here. So the more that I look at this, the more that I uncover, the worse that it gets. It also occurs to me as I'm working on this, and given how old this engine is, there's absolutely no way that with 215,000 miles that the spark plug well seals are not gone as well. So I think what I'm going to end up doing is actually just purchasing new valve covers altogether to do this job, because I'm not confident in all of the rest of the oil seals, and this engine is just so much worse than I thought it was. The seal on the bottom of the valve cover has completely failed, and it's dripping all kinds of oil onto the exhaust manifold heat shield. So I'm going to continue to clean this a little bit, just kind of see how bad it really is, what else I might need to purchase as part of this job, and then we'll kind of go from there. Now that we have it clean, and what I ended up actually doing is going and doing what I said I would never do, which is power washing the engine and the engine bay, but it worked out. So we're here, things are relatively clean. You still see some sand here. I didn't go crazy. I'm just gonna make sure the big stuff is gone, so that way I can safely and comfortably take this valve cover off and make sure I'm not dropping stuff into the engine. So now that that's done, we're gonna go ahead and concentrate on the left side or the driver's side here. And we really have two things to contend with. We have our PCV hoses, and we have electronics. So the electronics are gonna run up the side of the engine. One goes to the throttle body. A couple go to places I don't care to go find out. And then we of course have our spark plugs and our fuel injectors. So basically I'm just gonna start at the front, and I'm gonna take everything off and disconnect this entire wiring harness, and then make sure I can get it tucked to either side, probably further down if I can swing it, so that way we have some room up top. You're gonna need a combination of a 10mm socket, of course your fingers, and probably a needle nose pliers to get some of these connections out like this one here. One last thing before we do this, you'll wanna disconnect the negative battery terminal on your battery, so that way everything is just, there's no power going to anything. All right, let's do this. As you're going through this, if you're concerned about getting it back on in the right place, then go ahead and take pictures of this before you get started, so that way you don't forget where everything goes. For a lot of these, I'm just gonna replace the bolt into the hole that it came out of, so that way I don't lose them. Well, I'll tell you, the sand is adding a fun and new challenge to this, because when you have little clips like this, for instance, you can't really push them together because they're jammed full of sand. So it's really adds to the joy. I have a couple more spark plug wires to go. There's two there, and there's two more fuel injector connectors, of course, and then I believe it looks like in the back there is a wire that's just connected to the top of the valve cover that we'll want to remove as well. In fact, it looks like that's our oxygen sensor cable. I was having trouble moving the harness down, and I realized I have one more connection up here. It's this guy. There's just a couple clips, one here, one down here, that it's still connected to. So just pop those out, and we should be able to move this down now. Excellent. So we take this now, kind of snake it all down, and we can push it. Here, bring that down there. We can kind of just push it down, and that should now give us enough room to pull this out. Now you'll see we have everything disconnected, and with this out of the way, even with it back here, we'll be able to lift up the valve cover and pull it off without that really being much of a problem. On this side, we're nearly ready to take it off. We just need to take off our PCV hoses. We have two here. So this one should slide right out. Yep, in fact, that's actually way too loose. I gotta figure that out. And then this one's just gonna be, of course, a regular old clamp. So we will grab that, slide that off. Lastly, on this side, we just need to pull off the 4 coil packs. Excellent, all 4 are out. And so honestly, we're just about ready to rock here. For now, I'm going to go ahead and remove the bolts, and then once we take those out, we'll be able to pop this off. There's going to be a little RTV in the front two corners where basically there's sort of like a 90-degree or close to it angle that needs to have some liquid RTV in there, and then the rest should just be the gasket. So we are ready to remove the driver's side valve cover. I went and took all of the screws out. Again, there's 12. Don't forget the ones obviously in the very, very back. There's a little divot back there you can see. But I also wiped the top edge as clean as I could to try to make sure that we don't have any debris once we pop this off to, of course, fall in. We're going to have to pull this up a little bit over top of the spark plug wells, but it looks like we have more than enough clearance to deal with that. And then for me, because I have so much, terrible sand and everything in here, I'm going to move it over to the right as much as I can. So if anything does kind of come off the top of it, it's going to fall to the right of the engine and not in it. To pop this loose, it's on there pretty tight. You have the RTV in the front. That's really no big deal, but it's still going to be pressed pretty hard against the top of the cylinder head. We just have to I'm going to take like a plastic pry bar and just very gently pry it loose, and you'll kind of see it pop off once it breaks. All right, so I just have a little plastic pry bar in here. These are used for like interior plastic pieces. There we go. Kind of hear it popping loose here. Excellent. There we go. It's loose on the back. So now I'm just going to get in here and loosen it off the RTV. Oh, it already is. It's promising. So now I'm just going to grab it from the center, lift it off of those spark plug wells, and then very gently kind of let it work its way out here. If it gets caught, just gently work those things out. There we go. Set that aside. And the very first thing I'm going to do with this off is I'm going to take any debris that of course is collecting, push up and push it over into basically on top of the engine here. And I'll worry about cleaning out the threads once we have everything put back in place. But I'm going to do that on the top edge and of course the bottom edge. And then I'm also going to very gently grab this and pull that out as well. I don't think I've seen a dirtier or nastier valve cover. So honestly, it's kind of a miracle that I got it out without dropping any of this junk into the valve train. I didn't realize how much sand was caked on the bottom here. So as you can see here, it's pretty bad. So what I'm going to do is, again, I don't want to trust the oil seals in each one of these spark plug holes. So I'm just going to go buy a new valve cover. And then the process will be the same, of course, with a new one or if you're just reusing this old one. The only difference would be you just want to make sure that this channel is clean when you put the new valve cover gasket back in. So we're going to have to take a break. I'll come back with new valve covers and we'll reinstall them. So we are back with our nice, clean, and most importantly, sand-free valve cover. A couple things to note here. I actually decided to go OEM on this, mostly because it was really only a couple dollars more and they had it in stock at my local dealership. Also, on the OEM valve covers, it comes with the PCV valve. I don't know if the aftermarkets come with them or not, but it was just good to know that this already has it. What the OEM part doesn't come with, however, is the gasket. Now, the gasket, I went with Felpro gaskets, and it was, cost effective. They're relatively affordable, and I think they were like less than $25 for the pair. If you look at the gasket side by side, it's incredible the difference. So clearly the gasket was the problem here. Holding it up, it would actually keep its shape, just holding it on one side. That is until gravity took over and the gasket itself just started falling apart under its own weight. So the actual valve cover, other than being utterly disgusting and dirty, actually did look okay. I probably could have reused it if I wanted to, mostly because, of course, on the underside of it and in the spark plug wells, there was no oil in the spark plug wells. They were dry and clean. But, I just don't like to risk it. Again, the engine's so old, might as well just replace it anyways. So we're going to flip this over here. we're going to grab one of our gaskets, and I checked the little part number and they appear to be the same. So we're just going to, test fit it. We'll test fit both of them before we install it just to make sure they're not different, but I think they're going to end up being the same. The easiest way to find where your gasket goes is just find the actual bend. So that would be the bend in the gasket, and that's going to sit on this side, which is going to be the front of the engine. So we just want to take this and line it up and push it into place, and just basically go around and push it into that little channel. And if it doesn't fit, it'll be obvious, right? You'll have a little curve in the gasket where there isn't a curve in the valve cover. Excellent, so that's nice and pressed in. And you can test it by flipping it over, giving it a good wiggle, and making sure it doesn't pop out, because obviously we're going to be flipping this over to install it. We don't want it to be falling out while we're trying to install it. Now I'm going to grab the other one and install the gasket on the other one just to make sure both fit and they look good, even though we haven't started on the passenger side yet. This side is looking great as well. Everything fits just fine. So now grab your oil-resistant gasket maker. I'm using Permatex Ultra Black. Use whatever you feel is appropriate. And now we're going to make sure we have our final clean done. So we're going to clean that mating surface on the top of the cylinder head, throw in our RTV, slap this down, and then screw it back in the correct order. Now I use the combination of a plastic scraper and a blue scour pad to just go around and make sure that the surface that the gasket is going to be touching, which is, you'll see a pretty distinct line here, is nice and clean. Now you'll see down here I have a little bit of grime here still left, and that's no big deal. This is outside the gasket. The important part is this inside right here. So what I'm going to do is just run a clean, dry finger all the way around and make sure that that surface that the gasket is touching is nice and clean. And then all we need to do is throw in our RTV in these corners up here, and then go get it and put it on. We're ready to go. I'm going to grab my RTV, and I'm going to put it in the two corners here. There we go. There's one. We'll put it in the other corner here. You don't need to go crazy with this stuff. You want just enough so that when you press into those corners, it of course covers all the way down into that corner, as opposed to letting something through. So have at least 2 bolts ready, so that way when we get it in and lined up, we can at least get it in place and have it held in place. So I have my new valve cover, and I'm doing one last check to make sure that it's in place and everything feels good. And so now you want to gently guide it in here. There we go. And then once it's lined up, I'm going to give it one more peek down the back side. Yep, everything's in place still. Line it up. Awesome. And now I'm going to get one of my bolts in place. There we go. Get my other one in place. Excellent. So I'm going to make sure that we have it actually being pushed down. It is. Good, good. And now I'm going to go through and I'm going to put all the bolts in this order, and we need to do it one round at 17 inch-pounds and then the second round at 74 inch-pounds. I finished round 2, and we look like we are in very good shape here. You want to make sure that the RTV kind of squeezed out of each corner. That means that, of course, that you're getting it into that corner and you're pushing it down. So that looks good. And then also, just take a peek all the way around it. Obviously, you can't get to the back very well, but you can feel for it. And just make sure you can sort of feel the gasket with your fingernail underneath the edge all the way around, just making sure it didn't sort of like fold out or do anything crazy. And mine feels good. Feels really good. So not only that, of course, it's going to stop all of the leaking, and it looks infinitely better. So what I'm going to do now is just take all of my hoses. Just connect your hoses back up, connect your electrics back up, reinstall your coil packs, and that's pretty much it. There's really not anything else to it. There is going to be a wait time on the gasket maker, so just read your instructions. You want to avoid running the engine for a certain period of time while that stuff cures. So we finished up that side, and I actually went ahead and went over to the passenger side, or the right side, and I got that done as well. Now it's really going to be the same steps. The only thing you're going to run into is there's going to be a little bit of tightness on the back on the main wiring harness, as well as kind of like a little AC line that pokes up over top. It's just going to interfere a little bit getting the valve cover out and back in. Other than that, it's a pretty simple job, and honestly, compared to the Xterra, I did this on the Xterra a couple of years ago, this is actually a lot easier. You have to take off a lot less stuff. So it's a simple unbolt and bolt it back in job, and that's gonna be it. So if you liked this video, please be sure to head down and hit the like button. I make sure to include anything that I bought for this job down in the description below. So if you want to go pick it up from Amazon, you can do that down there. And make sure you subscribe for more content like this. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.